our leadership fellowship is designed to inspire you to make a difference in early childhood education. And our goal is to encourage you to take small but impactful steps to influence those around you, including state decision makers. So we're so excited to have State Representative Andrea White as our guest speaker today. She's going to share her leadership journey and how she uses her influence to positively impact the lives of children and families in Ohio. Representative White's commitment to advocating for children, families, and early childhood professionals was very evident when she co-chaired the Step Up to the committee responsible for reviewing Step Up to Quality. She demonstrated her commitment, her belief in quality early childhood. So we're so thankful for you to join us, and we just want to have a conversation with you, and I'll let you tell them a little bit more about yourself, and you can take it away from here.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me today. And I'll kind of jump around a little bit because I don't know exactly what you would like to hear that might resonate. So I'm going to just tell you a bunch of things. So I am the middle child of 5 children. I have, there's 4 girls and 1 boy in my family. The boy's the youngest. So I was the sister that did stuff like, instigated. Somebody wanted to return something they didn't like at a restaurant. Well, don't just sit there and take it. Go up and tell them. For whatever reason, I played that role in the family. I have my dad, who's 97 and is still alive. My mom's 88. Came up with that whole Depression era. Both of them had family members that were alcoholics. So they had, taught us to stand up for ourselves, to have a skill, to be independent, but above all, to have a faith. And so my faith is really a lot of what drives me, and like, kind of, what do you have for me here, Lord? As my life has changed, as various things have changed. And so for me, when I think about, why I'm the way I am and why I lean in and why I don't lean in, a lot of who we are is where we've come from, but also overcoming and challenging the status quo in ourselves, in our circumstances, etc. And so there's, I don't know if you guys like quotes, but I always kind of resonated with a few different quotes as I have gotten involved in the political spectrum. I mean, for me, it's kind of like, something's wrong. Are we going to all just sit by and watch and not do anything? You may recall the quote about from some famous guy who says, tyranny prevails when good people do nothing. That always kind of spoke to me. Like, if I really want to change something, I've got to do something. I can't just sit by. When I think about, there's several things, in my faith. You look at the scripture, whether you're from a Jewish background or a Christian background, the scripture is full of things like, when you know to do good and you don't do it, it's wrong, or, take a stand, make something right, and don't just sit idly by. And so for me, I don't always know the right thing to do, but I know that if I do nothing, I really don't have a right to complain. So that has kind of motivated me in my life. When I married a guy who wanted to make a difference as well, and he was involved in the political process, and he wanted to run for office. And so I was really there. I started out in communications. I got my degree at Wright State and went into hospital PR and HR. Then I worked for a statewide nonprofit promoting awareness and inclusion of people with developmental disabilities back in the mid-'80s, before some of you were born, where people were coming out of institutions, going into schools, into communities, into group homes, into workplaces. So what do we do to break down those barriers? So that was a good learning experience for me, traveling around the state, helping equip people to try to make a difference. And then I started my own communications consulting business and did that for 15 years while my kids were growing. I have 3 daughters. But my husband actually was the first one to get in the political realm. Ran for Kettering City Council. I'm from the Dayton area, so my district is District 36, and it's staying District 36 in the new map. I live in Kettering, which is in the south suburbs of Dayton, second largest city in Montgomery County. I have quite a bit of the city of Dayton, and I still retain quite a bit of the city of Dayton in my new district, as well as Oakwood, Kettering, and then Riverside, which is by the Air Force Museum, if you've ever been there. But I lost a few communities. I've gained a few. Right now, I'm just focused on representing the people I represent now so I can try to make an impact. But my husband ran for political office next as a state representative in the first term limits class in 01 to 08. And so I had my first exposure to the legislature. And during that time, early on, people were like, Andrea, we need good women in office. When are you going to run for office? And so I had been, a leader in various community things. And, I thought, well, maybe I will run for this clerk of court position. So I ran for Kettering Municipal Court, and I did that for 17 years. And really, it was about people, process, and technology, the same sort of skills I was using in my business. But I will tell you, while I was clerk, I saw kids. So I did a tutoring, after school tutoring, mentoring thing for kids in my children's elementary. And so I saw those kids. As I became clerk, I got involved in this Partners for Community, Partners, I forget the name of it right now, Partners for Healthy Youth. And it was a city school community collaborative. So while I'm in that, I learned, oh my goodness, there's a food issue in Kettering. Kids are eating off the shelves in Kroger in the summertime. They need help. So I worked with people to get a community collaborative to bring food and mentoring, teach the kids skin in the game in this apartment complex. And we've been doing it for maybe 14 years. I also would see those same children that had been in my tutoring program at the summer food program. And then when I was clerk, I started seeing these kids as they aged, some of them from my children's high school or even from these tutoring programs showing up across the counter from me with substance use issues. And so basically, the more I learned, lots of communities were having issues with teen alcohol and drug prevention. So again, talked to some like-minded individuals, and we basically started knocking on doors and leveraging our political capital to start an 8-community teen alcohol and drug prevention initiative called the South Suburban Coalition. And that has gone on for several years, and it's kind of morphed into some other different things now. But I share these things with you because all of us within our realm have situations where we see things and we wish that someone would do something. And we think, I don't have the time or the bandwidth. But what I want to say and encourage you is stepping into the space is the ultimate act of leadership. You don't have to run everything. You don't have to get credit for everything. But by being an instigator and an activator, you can make change and you can make a difference. And, I've learned, after 17 years, I was praying about, should I run again for clerk of courts? Opportunities opened up for me to run for the legislature. And I thought, I have these different skills in business, government, nonprofits. How do I bring that together with all these serious issues facing our youth and families? And so that's why I decided to step into this. But again, in this realm, it's not about me having all the answers. It's about me being willing to ask the questions. And leadership to me is not necessarily being the figurehead or being the one that runs everything, but it truly is being willing to speak up, to say something, to ask the questions, and not be afraid to be the one asking the hard questions in the room. Now, I will tell you, when I was running for office, I met Joanne Davidson, who many of you may know. She was the first woman Speaker of the House several years ago. She's now in her 90s. She started a Women's Leadership Institute and that sort of thing. But I had never met her. But when I was running for office or thinking about it, I was at an event and I met her and I asked her, what's your advice for women who are thinking about stepping into a bigger arena? And she said, don't wait to be asked. Women wait to be asked. And I will tell you the same advice that my children, I have 3 daughters, like I mentioned. The youngest one is about to turn 30, so they're a bit older. But I would tell them when they were sitting home, nobody's an initiator. Let's just face it. How many of you guys initiated social plans multiple times in the past few weeks in your friend group? Raise your hand. Okay, a couple people, and that's more than some crowds. I will say that people are waiting for someone to ask them, particularly in the high school years, somebody to ask them to do something. And I would tell my girls, everybody's sitting there waiting for somebody to be the first to initiate. So a lot of the energy around leadership to me is just being willing to expose a problem, to be an activator, and to recognize you may not have people that follow you like the Pied Piper, but you're probably going to find people that see the same issues that you do when you start shining light, or that can help you see things in a different light, that you think you might see an issue and all of a sudden it's much bigger or much different, but you spoke up. So I guess the message I want to encourage you to do is continue to be an instigator. You know, several of you mentioned you have leadership roles now. First of all, you're all leading a classroom, you know, and the fact is you're modeling leadership behaviors for those young minds, which is really going to impact our future generations. I think that as we look at AI and as we look at technology and we look at the way our children are learning, still the model of a person and the relationship and the impact of an individual is what is really going to continue to make the difference, because that's how we're wired. That's how we are built and how we're made. So what I wanted to encourage you also is you may have seen studies on the power of one. I read this book again when my kids were in like middle school and high school, and it was about, you know, how do you talk to your kids and this and that. And basically it talked about this research, that there's a lot of research about the power of one. It's not just a slogan. So they would do this research where they had kids in a classroom, and the teacher was up there doing something that everybody knew was wrong on the board, but nobody spoke up. And so it continued and the class went on. Then they had a plant of a kid who was supposed to speak up and say, teacher, that doesn't look right. I don't think that's right. And so when they did that, multiple other kids spoke up time and time again. So the power of one to allow others to have the courage to give voice to what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what maybe you don't have time to solve the world's problems, but you have time to come alongside somebody and say, this is real. I'm legitimizing what you see, and I'm willing to step in the gap with you, you know, based on what your time is. So I just want to encourage you, the power of one that you exhibit. And I will tell you, as a legislator, when people come up to the State House and testify that are on the front lines like you guys, it makes a tremendous impact. It's fine for Kim and the board to send stuff in, and keep sending it in, Kim, you know, and coming in and testifying. But when you're on the front lines and you are testifying to what you see and heard, it makes a big impact. You're putting a face and a story to the reality that we're trying to fix or cause more harm to as legislators. So I want to encourage you, even though you don't always see the results of your actions, the fact that you're standing up and speaking out in and of itself is like that Einstein, for every action, there's a reaction. So I just wanted to, basically, that's kind of what I wanted to say as far as, you know, being a leader for me is just being willing to speak what I see and having the courage to be rejected, you know, and to not place my confidence in what other people think about me. My dad was big on that, maybe because he had 4 daughters, but don't base what you're going to believe on what people think about you, or what you're willing to stick your neck out on of what people think about you. But what you know to be true based on your own personal belief system, your faith, your family values, whatever.